Just so you're aware. Okay, Don.
Okay. Good evening, everyone. My name is Don Pavlovich, and I'm the current president of Pathways Serious Mental Illness Society. I would like to begin by thanking everyone for your virtual attendance this evening. It is very much appreciated since using these platforms can sometimes be frustrating. We appreciate your patience. It's been a tough year with COVID-19, many challenges in mental health and addictions. Pathways Serious Mental Illness Society has witnessed these challenges and has adapted its programs to meet these challenges. Each year, Pathways provides support and education to families with loved ones experiencing serious mental illness, often with addictions. This evening, we have a special guest who has graciously agreed to address our membership. Sheila Malcolmson is the Minister of Mental Health and Addiction. Unfortunately, she has been delayed in the House. They're doing a vote. So once she's available, she'll be joining us. Just moving on. So what we will do here is we'll move on to the agenda to number 3 on the agenda, which would be approving the agenda. You have been provided with instructions on using Zoom on your package, including how to reach us by telephone if your internet crashes. We will just go over a couple of things before we begin the meeting. We have muted the microphones of all attendees to avoid any potential distractions caused by background noise. I would ask that you keep your microphone muted until you are recognized by the chair. If you want to ask a question or speak to a motion, ensure your video is on and raise your hand. When the chair recognizes you, you will be asked to unmute your microphone and speak slowly and clearly so everyone can understand you. To vote, use the raised hand function by clicking on reactions at the bottom of your screen. Then click on the raised your hand function. Okay. Now to the meeting. I have been advised that we require 5% of membership and no less than 3 members in good standing for a quorum. We have 47 members present, so I can then confirm we have a quorum. Approval of the agenda. You have been provided with an agenda which you will see on your screen. I'll give you a minute just to check it over. I have a motion from Shirley Chan, seconded by Joe Gormley. Is there any discussion? All in favor, raise your hand. Emma, have you got that?
We've got a lot of people using the function, so we're just waiting.
Okay. Let me know when you're okay.
We have 17 so far. Yeah, I think we have 27 hands raised. Some people aren't on video, so.
$27, did you see?
Yeah, I believe so. If everyone would like to use the raise your hand function, it's a lot easier just for us, just because it's quite difficult. But if you're struggling, you can raise your hand, it's fine.
I'll give us another minute. Yeah,
that seems right. Done.
Okay, so the motion's carried. Okay, number 3, approval of the minutes. Approval of the minutes of the May 27, 2020 AGM. I have a motion from Joe Gormley, seconded by Kim Thomas, to accept and approve the minutes of the May 27th, 2020 AGM as circulated in your package. Are there any errors or omissions? Please raise your hand if you'd like to speak. Okay, I guess we can continue. All in favor, please raise your hand.
So again, if you go to the bottom of your screen, there's a button called Reactions. You can click on that and hit Raise Your Hand. Or if you're on a mobile device, you can hit the three buttons, the three dots that say More, and click Raise Your Hand. Thank you, everyone. Okay, we have 27 again.
Okay, I think we have sufficient.
Yep.
Okay, motion carried.
And Don,
Now, sorry.
Minister Malcolmson is here, just so you're aware.
Oh, okay, we'll just want to get back here. Okay, I'd like to formally introduce Minister Sheila Malcolmson. This evening we have a special guest who has graciously agreed to address our membership. Sheila Malcolmson is the Minister of Mental Health and Addictions. She is the Vice Chair of the Cabinet Working Group on Mental Health and Trust Council. Between 2015 and 2019, she also represented Nanaimo, Ladysmith, and Ottawa as a federal member of Parliament. Again, we ask you to remain muted as we have formulated a number of questions on behalf of pathways in our community that we will be putting forward to Minister Malcolmson this evening. Please welcome the Honourable Sheila Malcolmson.
Thank you so much, Don. I'm happy to be here. Can you hear me all right?
Yes, I can hear you.
Great, thank you. I'm joining you from the traditional territory of the Lekwungen speaking people, Songhees and Esquimalt First Nations. I'm in the BC legislature and we just finished 2 votes. And so thank you for waiting for me. I've been looking forward to this. I appreciate the invitation to learn more about the difficult work, the vital work that you're doing. And in the context of that, I want to acknowledge today the coroner's report on the loss of another 155 British Columbians to the overdose crisis. Every month of the pandemic, especially, the losses have been deeper and harder. And I send my condolences and my strength to the families and peers and workers who are affected by these terrible losses. I'm grateful for the chance to talk with you about, to share my vision of where the work we're trying to do as a government in this field, and particularly to learn what you need from us in order to do your work. All of you here today are here because you've got a connection to mental illness, whether you have experienced it yourself or whether you've supported a loved one or a client. We know that mental illness challenges an individual's education, work, and social life, and I understand the toll that it takes on the well-being of families who, they tell me, I hear, often feel frustration, shame, and sometimes grief. I can only imagine how difficult it is to see a loved one who is struggling, and how important it is to step up and help as you have. Families play such an important role helping their loved ones find their path to wellness, and we greatly appreciate your role in supporting families. This model that you've adopted, families helping families, is inspiring, and I'm grateful for how Pathways has stepped up in so many ways. especially during the pandemic, bringing supports to a virtual format so quickly, working to anticipate needs down the road, and helping people during a particularly difficult time. And I'm really grateful to support you in this work. I'm honored to serve as Minister of Mental Health and Addictions. This is Canada's first ministry of this type. The Premier created this ministry so that there would be one minister focused on mental health and addictions every single day. I have a strong foundation for the work that's ahead of me. I was appointed in November, already established during the previous government by my NDP colleagues, was a pathway to hope. BC's roadmap to create a seamless and integrated system of mental health supports and addictions care for everyone. And this was started by my friend and predecessor, Minister Judy Darcy, who was the first Minister of Mental Health and Addictions. I've got a big to-do list that the Premier gave me in my mandate letter. It includes expanding access to counseling, including new e-health and other technologies to bring care to more people in more regions of British Columbia, and leading the work to develop complex care housing to provide an increased level of support for British Columbia's most vulnerable, for whom a more intensive care is needed than housing, supportive housing can provide. But we are in the midst of two public health emergencies. British Columbians' mental health has been under immense strain during the pandemic, with many of the in-person supports being reduced or not available at all. It's been particularly difficult for families supporting people living with mental illness. And now more than ever, British Columbians need quick access to free or low-cost mental health support. And the province has acted quickly to respond. Since the pandemic began, we've invested more than $25 million for additional mental health and addiction support and services as quickly as possible, including new and enhanced online mental health supports to manage anxiety, like Bounce Back and Living to the Full courses for coping with stress, new virtual supports for youth and young adults, including Virtual Foundry and Family Smart, and new virtual supports and peer programs for frontline healthcare workers, like the Care for Caregivers program to support people, especially in long-term care, that have been under immense pressure. Also, suicide prevention programming and life promotion programming for post-secondary students and Indigenous and Métis youth, expanding access to low and no-cost community-based counseling and offering them virtually, and providing more online tools and resources to help people assess and manage their own mental health. We've also increased access to online peer support and system navigation. And in every case, there is more to do. After decades where mental health and substance care was neglected, we know that many people living with mental illness and addiction struggle to get help early, and that COVID-19 has made those challenges worse. And that's why our government is working urgently on many fronts to bring new services into every community across British Columbia. We are working hard to build up that system of care, building it from the ground up to focus on early intervention and prevention so that problems can be addressed before they grow into big problems. And we are reducing wait times for young people who need higher levels of care. There's absolutely no question that our approach needed to begin with improving mental health and wellness for children, youth, and young adults. We want to give every child their best possible start, and we know that that can yield tremendous gains. We also know that addressing trauma early on can make a lifelong difference. And that's why our priority is on transforming mental health and substance use care for young people, improving and integrating services, and bringing services into our homes, communities, and schools. Amplifying the urgency of all this work is the heartbreaking and deepening overdose crisis, a crisis that's been magnified by the pandemic. Over 1,700 British Columbians lost their life to overdose in the 2020 year. That's almost 5 people a day. Most of them were at home and alone. Now, before the pandemic, overdose deaths had dropped for the first time in years, but COVID-19 has made everything worse. Disruption in the supply chain for illicit drugs made them more toxic, and stigma and criminalization drove more people to use the loan. And I know I'm reminded every day behind every overdose statistic is a person with a story and a family left behind with an irreparable loss. It's heartbreaking, and we are working hard to stop it. We've already taken urgent action on many fronts, like expanding the number of overdose prevention sites, ensuring greater access to safe supply, adding more outreach teams, nurses, and social workers to connect more people to treatment, including doubling youth treatment beds. But we need to keep working to save more lives and remove the barriers that keep people from accessing the services that they need and deserve. At the same time, we're also working to ensure that people with mental health and substance use challenges have greater access to integrated, higher quality care, where every door is the right door. And that includes team-based primary care, where mental health and substance use professionals can provide specialized services, and where access to care does not depend on the size of your bank account. That's thanks to a dramatic expansion of affordable counseling in communities. And where more resources are meeting a higher standard of quality for all British Columbians. And while we've made great strides in building that effective system of care, there is still a very long road ahead of us. An important part of this journey is working with the Ministry of Health on strengthening the quality of care that's provided under the Mental Health Act, something that Pathways has been a strong advocate for, while ensuring the safety of people receiving services under the Act. And so too is our continued work, ensuring that police are well supported in their role as first responders in highly complex crisis situations, working with vulnerable populations. I know that we're going to discuss that particular work in more detail. So to close, there's no doubt that to get to a place where every person living with mental illness or substance use disorder gets the help they need, we will require an ongoing fundamental transformation from where we are today. It will take time, but we are heading in the right direction. We're expanding a wide range of supports and services, coordinated and wrapping around the people who need them, and always through consultation and engagement, learning from the people these vital supports will serve and drawing on their expertise. And we have the professionalism and skill and dedication of people like you who are working every day with those who are struggling and alongside their families. I'm grateful for the hard work that you are doing for families coping with, advocating for, and supporting people with serious mental illness and addictions. And for this, I thank every one of you, personally and on behalf of our government and of our province. We share a common goal that every person who lives with a mental illness gets the support that they need, where and when they need it. There's much that we have accomplished, but much more to do. And I have no doubt that we will succeed if we join our efforts and continue to work together. Thank you so much for your service and for the invitation, and I look forward to more conversation. And I apologize for my radiator, which is really noisy. I hope it wasn't as loud for you as it was for me.
I was just hoping it wasn't one of us that was causing that clanking problem, although yours was the only mic we think that was unmuted.
Great.
So thank you very much, Minister, for sharing your vision and your mandate and priorities with the Pathways membership this evening, and our supporters as well. I think that the program that you outlined of expansion and the objective of trying to ensure that every person who needs help gets the help they need is indeed a very important to all of us. And we believe, you know, a better investment into the lives of all our people who suffer from mental illness and addiction. So my name is Shirley Chen, and I have a couple of questions that I'm posing on behalf of our membership, questions that concern our families here in the Lower Mainland. First, we are very pleased, Minister, that the Attorney General is defending our Mental Health Act against a Charter of Rights and Freedoms challenge. If the challenge is successful, involuntary patients who have been admitted without their consent will be able to refuse the treatment necessary for their recovery and release. Their refusal can occur through being found capable or otherwise, if incapable, having an advance directive not to be treated, or a substitute decision maker refusing treatment on their behalf. We're well aware from experience in Ontario and our own experience that treatment refusal leads to unnecessarily prolonged involuntary detention, more assaults on nurses and other patients, more seclusion and family members, more seclusion and restraint, and of course, more suffering for the person and distress for the family, and of course, cognitive damage. So given that the Attorney General is saying that involuntary admission must lead to appropriate treatment, do you see a role for your ministry in ensuring this happens? And what can Pathways do to help you preserve the Mental Health Act?
Thank you so much, Shirley, for the question. And these are just among the most complex conversations. And so the advocacy and the solidity of Pathways in this area is very important and appreciated. So I'll reaffirm what you've heard from my colleague, the Attorney General, David Eby. We know that involuntary admissions under the Mental Health Act can be necessary to protect health and save lives, and nothing is more important to us than keeping people safe and ensuring people are treated with dignity and respect. We know, we are drawing on your experience, the stories that we hear from you about the times when someone is experiencing a mental health emergency where being admitted involuntarily to the hospital is an absolutely necessary intervention. And we understand the gravity of the situation and the what it is to families or friends of people in crisis to take that step. And when, of course, we take seriously the need to balance the rights of the individual with our obligation to help protect and support people living with mental illness. That's our job as a government and as a healthcare system. And at the same time, we really recognize that the choice of services and supports is a very important part of a patient's recovery journey for both mental and physical health. So choice is critical, and the absence of choice can be detrimental to recovery. And more than anything, we want to have the supports in community and in the medical system and in our education system so that things don't get to that crisis. I mean, that's ideal, but I just presume that's a given in this conversation. So we are committed to taking the necessary steps to ensure that when involuntary admissions are required under the Act, that the care provided is respectful and safe, and that people come out better at the end of it. And every year, our quality improvement measures are being conducted to make sure that there is compliance in completing the required forms under the Mental Health Act. And then a very important piece of this, which was particularly revealed in Mary Ellen Turpel-Lafont's report, which our government and Minister Adrian Dix commissioned, now named In Plain Sight, that cultural safety is a vital part of care under the Mental Health Act. And we've got particular work to do as a government in this area. I'll be honest though, I hear harrowing stories from people who have had terrible experiences under involuntary admission. And the stories are heart-wrenching and they are very compelling. So a very specific way that Pathways can support the work that we need to do as a responsible government is to let us know when that care is given within the hospital system and in an involuntary care basis. When it goes well, I'd love to hear from you about it. And I'd love you to be able to personalize it, because it really is going to be, I think, an increasingly important voice to hear. We want to hear when it goes well. We want to hear when people are treated with dignity. And I promise you, I have so many letters in my inbox that tell the story, the very tough stories about when families have worked very hard to connect their loved ones and children in particular to care. And I recognize that those are the times that people take the time to write, is when it's gone badly. So if you write stories to me about when it has gone well, I promise you that I will use them and I rely on them. And then I also recognize, Shirley, that and Dawn, in asking that, I know I'm asking people that are already pressured in all kinds of ways by the family commitment and the commitment to community that you have. So if it's too much to ask, I know you'll just set it aside. But if you are inspired to let us know those good news stories about when the care is just what was needed and the result was good, then those are powerful and important for me to hear, and then for me to incorporate into my own storytelling about the work that is ahead. So we can have good models about good care and what can result when things go well.
Well, thank you, Madam Minister, for your reply and your reassurance about the work that you're trying to achieve and the need to defend the BC Mental Health Act. I think that we have many families who indeed have some excellent positive stories about how the the Mental Health Act and involuntary admission to hospital has made a difference, a positive difference in the lives of the individual who's the loved one and their families. So I think we would consider it an honor to try and collect those stories for you. Certainly, we're pleased to have you charge us with that responsibility. We'll be happy to try and deliver. Because we know that the Act is worth defending. We know that bad experiences do happen, and when they happen, often it's the individual or the quality of training. It's not the policy and it's not the Act. That's the problem, right? So, we're happy to be able to share those stories and collect those stories. So I'd like to move on then to the second question, which is regarding funding for mental health response teams. And, in the families that Pathways serve, they don't usually call 911 unless their loved one is in serious distress and very aggressive or threatening, extremely disturbed. They call when they feel they can't cope or they feel terribly unsafe, that their family member may be smashing a window, or they might have a knife in their hand, or maybe they're feeling suicidal and threatening to hurt themselves, if not already doing so. So when they do dial 911, what we hear from families is that the operators do try to comply. They keep the families on the phone, and they tell the family that they're trying to get CAR 87 when we ask for CAR 87, and then we say it's a mental health problem. But too often, the operators have to say, look, CAR 87 is not available, it's busy or can't make it, so we're going to send a police team. It's not the same thing, even though the police are well trained. And we recognize that the CAR 87 service right now operates in Vancouver. It is, a team of you must know that is a police together with either a psychiatric nurse or a social worker who's trained and works well with the police to try and de-escalate and try and bring the person to the point where they might go to the hospital for support. So our Vancouver service organizations and housing providers say that it's a great program in theory, but it's not available, and sometimes not for several days, at which time the person can be hurt or hurt others. And so if that's how long it takes for the service to arrive, it's really not an effective service. So our families need a response teams that are specialized in responding to people in extreme distress, people often in the throes of psychosis or suicide. And what steps are your ministry and the government of BC taking to increase the necessary and critical resources for these families in crisis? In other words, supporting the police teams with more nurses and social workers.
Yeah, thank you for the question. This is in the community that I represent in Nanaimo. This is an ongoing conversation, and I'm hearing it from across the province as well. So it's a really important part of the assignment that the Premier has given me to look at that interconnection between policing and mental health supports. And we are working, and this is a helpful conversation for me to have and good reinforcement about the need to find good solutions for people that require urgent mental health support. It's hearing the stories about Car 87 are important and inspiring, and I recognize that the same kind of model is happening in a number of health authorities. Interior, North, and Island health authorities are all delivering kind of the equivalent of Car 87 services. So, and one of the pieces that is going to come out of the review of the Police Act that we're doing right now, and many days a week you can watch the deliberations of the Police Act Review Committee online. So interesting for you to be, tuning in if some of your members can, just to kind of get a bit of a sense of the conversation, and increasing resources to these kind of overlap services, like you described here, may well be one of the recommendations. Important that the people on the ground make that recommendation to the review committee. There are a couple of ways that we are working already to support people with the overlap of police and mental health and substance use service providers. These mobile crisis response services like Car 87 in Vancouver. We've also got police partnerships with local case management and outreach teams such as assertive community treatment teams. They are already in Vancouver, Victoria, Maple Ridge, Mission, Kelowna, Nanaimo, and Cowichan Valley, Duncan. Those are just about, some of them are being added, bringing the provincial total of ACT teams or assertive community treatment teams to 30. And they're all with the intention of getting people connected to service, but particularly through at that sort of time of crisis. And then we've also got mental health liaison officers in a number of places. I'm going to just read this little bit of a press release from Nanaimo that just came out yesterday from the RCMP. The headline is, Nanaimo woman gives Mountie 10 out of 10 for mental health check. And it's a very nice description of what can happen when things go well, that the support was there and the de-escalation was there. Here's part of the quote. Because of you and that lovely nurse, I got the help I needed. It made me feel less afraid to reach out and say I'm not okay. And I don't feel ashamed for admitting that I need help. Also, from how you treated me before I arrived at the hospital, I had a positive experience with hospital staff. It really makes a difference. So I want to thank you both for the respect, the care, and the support. If I was to rate my experience in regards to this mental health check, I would give it a 10 out of 10. Anyway, we want to have more positive stories like that because it does give us that hope that we can do better, and it inspires us to want to remove the barriers to getting more. Maybe I'll just return this for a minute back to the Police Act review. A lot of the focus, because of the activism and protests and the naming of racism in policing this summer, really kind of focused that Police Act review on racism. But one of the three elements of it is all about mental health support. So it really is a good tool for us. And since the Police Act has not been reviewed for 45 years, it certainly is out of date. And us getting it right on this review in legislation will be something that then sets the tone and gives us some direction around the funding supports that will make this go better. We've got new toolkits. This is the second last thing I'll talk about. We've got new toolkits for police agencies and health authorities to guide them in working together, addressing the needs of people with mental health challenges. And then also in my mandate letter is expanding situation tables, which are not so much for people in crisis, but people for whom the 911 call, particularly kind of at a neighborhood level, has happened again and again. It's a way of kind of workshopping between police and the service providers in the community. Here's someone who's got a police file, but their kind of infraction is really not of a criminal nature. And it's something that's been very successful in the communities that have them. It's already, they're in place in 10 British Columbia communities we've got work underway to add another 11 communities. In the places that have situation tables already, 54% of the police files that were brought to the table were closed because those cases were transferred to social service agencies that were in a better position to help the person with their underlying health or addiction or poverty or lack of housing that was at the underlying petty crime or whatever, or public disturbance that might have got police involved in the first place. So all these pieces, I mean, this is such a diverse and complex problem. We're working on many fronts to try to bring resources in a way that works better for people and families and communities. We've made some progress, and we know how much more there is to do, and how much better it's going to go when we do it together. With that, I'm going to say thank you so much for the invitation and the conversation, and let's talk again. I'm going to be reliant on your advice and your perspective and wisdom as I get deeper into my file, and you're going to be part of my ongoing education, I hope, and I look forward to continuing to work together. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
The Honourable Sheila Malcolmson, thank you very much for taking the time to address us this evening and for answering our questions. Our members would like more opportunities to dialogue in future, and trust this is just the beginning of a fruitful partnership between you and our community of families. Thank you very much. Okay, so we can continue with our agenda. And I think right now we're at the President's report. And so that being said, I will present the President's report. The challenges of COVID-19 has underscored the importance of family and friends during this past year. Pathways Board, the staff, and our treasured volunteers hope that you, your family, and friends are continuing to remain healthy and safe. Trying to maintain a sense of positiveness and calm can be a challenge for anyone during such uncertain times, and it can even be more challenging for someone with a mental illness, which is why I want you all to know that Pathway Serious Illness Society, Mental Illness Society, as always, is available to help families who are struggling to cope. We want people to feel confident to continue to use the resources that Pathways has always provided. Help is only a phone call away. Excuse me. Telephone number is 604-926-0856. Pathways is about and always will be about families helping families. In response to the pandemic, Pathways has done incredibly well in adapting to our new environment and transitioned our programs online. We have seen an uptake in the demand for our services, with more people both needing our services and also being able to access our services from anywhere in BC. Pathways is committed to keeping its members informed no matter what situation arises. Our teams of dedicated volunteers have gone above and beyond this year to ensure our doors remain open and maintain consistency in our service delivery for our families needing our support through this challenging time. Through the pandemic, Pathways has remained there for you and remains here to support our community of families. Pathways is available to support you through the normal channels via phone and email Monday through Friday from 9:30 a.m. to 4 p.m. Please do not hesitate to call. Again, the number 604-926-0856 or email familysupport@pathwayssmi.org. During this turbulent time, Pathways needs even more than ever your monetary support. Sadly and disappointingly, we have again been unable to organize our one and only annual fundraiser, the Circle of Strength Luncheon, for a second year in a row due to social distancing measures. This is a huge blow for Pathways and the support we so desperately need as we rely on your generous donations to deliver our programs that help support those families which need us the most. Please consider donating today to Pathways to help us keep our doors open and support the families in our community. A donation of any size can make a huge impact on families we support. It could fund a call from a family in crisis or help us deliver our family-to-family course and new workshops. If you can help support Pathways, we would be incredibly grateful for your kind and generous donations. It is with deep sorrow that Pathways says goodbye to one of its heroes, Cheryl Zipper, a past president who in December passed away peacefully in her sleep after a heroic fight with cancer. Her journey has been a noble one, with cherished family, friends, and loved ones by her side. Those who knew Cheryl will recall her courage, empathy, and determination to share her story with others. Cheryl helped guide families across BC to advocate effectively for their loved ones with a serious mental illness, helping families find their voice and their way through a maze of mental health services. The success of Pathways family-to-family education program is a testament to her leadership, purpose, and commitment to helping others. She worked with universities, high schools, and the community to provide firsthand stories that shed light on mental illness, reduced stigma, and raised awareness. Her role as Pathways president, Cheryl led with insight, care, and a vision to collaborate and connect with the whole community. It was Cheryl's voice of compassion and dedication through a phone call, which convinced me that I should become a Pathways board member. I will always be so thankful to Cheryl in making that call, for it has changed my life. I have learned that it's just not about me. It's the goal to help others. On a personal level, Cheryl's joy, determination, love, dedication, and grace has been an inspiration. She had the delight of seeing her daughter Dominique married this past summer at their family home. Cheryl is survived by her loving family, her beloved husband Peter, son Sterling, and daughter Dominique. Pathways is and always will be a volunteer-led society with its mission being families helping families. Our peer support model has been successfully delivered for many years now, with families who have a loved one with a serious mental illness having a safe community to turn to. We are so grateful to the many volunteers who, just like Cheryl, have donated countless hours of their time to helping other families with similar experiences of their own. I would like to give a special thanks to Lisa Stringle, who, following in Cheryl's footsteps, has worked tirelessly in transition of our family-to-family programs in 2020 through many changes. Lisa, you have made an impact on the lives of so many families across BC and are upholding Cheryl's legacy that will continue for years to come. We cannot thank you enough for the number of hours and sheer dedication that you have shown to our families. In September of this year, Emma Chapman joined Pathways as a new executive director. Emma brings 10 years of experience in increasing roles with other nonprofit societies. In the few short months she has been with Pathways, excuse me, I got a frog in my throat. Where am I here? Anyways, Emma has done an outstanding job of learning about the organization and implementing actions on many initiatives. I would like to welcome her to Pathways, and we look forward to working with her in the future. And finally, Pathways is so grateful to our dedicated board and all the volunteers who deliver our programs and keep our missions, our program missions moving forward. On behalf of Pathways, Serious Mental Illness Society, I thank you all for your continued support and kindness and generosity. Now, I would like to move on and ask Emma Chapman to present the Executive Director's report.
Thank you, Don. Hello, everyone. So there are three crucial pillars at Pathways. We have education, peer support, and advocacy. These pillars work together to facilitate learning, understanding, empathy, and advocacy, whilst also addressing important topics and discussions surrounding serious mental illness. The first pillar is education, with three specific program directives. Firstly, we have our family-to-family course. It's been quite the year for our course this year. The programme has seen a year of changes that our remarkable team has really taken in their stride, both volunteers and staff alike. Firstly, our spring course in 2020 was interrupted by COVID-19 shortly after the course began. The team transitioned to deliver the course via Zoom, which was new to everyone at the time. Out of the 30 people that registered, we had 6 people actually complete the course. But as time's gone on, we've all got a lot more used to our lives on Zoom, and we have come to recognise some benefits to delivering our course online. In 2020, not only were we tasked with NAMI redesigning the course from 12 weeks to 8 weeks, but we also had to transition the condensed course online due to COVID. This was a huge task for the team, and we were fortunate to have the support of Lisa Stringle, who led in the changes along with Nancy Ford. Lisa and Stephanie dedicated a lot of time to adapting the material to be relevant for our Canadian audience, whilst Lisa worked with Joe Gormley to ensure the course could be successfully delivered online. The hard work and the commitment of this core team meant the Family to Family 8-week course was ready to be delivered in the fall of 2020. This was no mean feat. The full course were held online and were grouped into 5 geographical areas: the North Shore, Vancouver, Tri-Cities, Nanaimo in partnership with the Mental Health Recovery Partners, and finally the Sunshine Coast and other areas. We had a total of 77 who registered and a total of 67 who completed the course in the fall. In total for the year of 2020, we had 107 people sign up and 70 people actually graduate from the Family to Family. There were some unexpected advantages of delivering the classes online. Firstly, we were able to reach more remote communities, which has been wonderful for the families who are in need of our support. Secondly, we have a number of people from the same family supporting their loved ones in BC, but all living in different areas and provinces of Canada. This has been particularly beneficial to these families who need to understand the healthcare system in BC to be able to support their loved ones who live here, but who personally live elsewhere. This course is run by a dedicated team of volunteer teachers who donate their time and share their personal experiences to help other families in our community. Thank you to our volunteer teachers, coordinators and producers, and all of our staff for making this a success. Pathways could not support families without you as an amazing team. I would like to make a special thanks to Lisa for doing a remarkable job in leading the coordination of the Family to Family this year, in keeping the course on track, taking a course transition to Zoom in her stride, and dedicating a phenomenal number of hours, never mind the blood, sweat and tears that she put into helping families across BC. Lisa really stepped up this year with the passing of Cheryl Zipper, who we recognise has left an incredible legacy that will continue to make a huge impact on families for years to come. Our second pillar is the high school presentations. So our first-hand stories is a unique and powerful storytelling model, which helps support students and people in the community to understand the nature and prevalence of serious mental illness. As a high school presentation, it is one of the most important educational programs. It includes 2 guest speakers, a person with a diagnosis and a family member. And following the COVID-19 outbreak, the school presentations were postponed for most of 2020. However, Pathways volunteers were able to still present to over 500 students in approximately 6 schools, where they've heard first-hand stories from our volunteer speakers within our community. We would like to thank all those involved who shared their story to help raise awareness and educate students in our community. And finally, workshops and public education series. Having moved all of our programs to be delivered on Zoom, although it was challenging to transfer everything online, we have found a number of benefits to our community. By offering Pathways public lecture series online, we've been able to reach a broader audience of people across BC. Despite the COVID disruptions, we successfully produced 2 workshops and delivered 4 lectures in 2020 with a total of 289 people attending. These lectures and workshops provide family members, those living with an illness, professionals, and the general public an opportunity to ask questions and receive answers directly from experts, people with lived experience and service providers in the field. We would like to thank all those who took the time to present to our community. We delivered an online workshop to UBC, which is another program that will remain a part of Cheryl Zipper's legacy. Our second pillar is peer support. Pathways peer support program offers families an opportunity to express and share their experiences in a confidential, secure, and support space. Pathways listens to families. The shared experience of a family members addresses the issues families often face, including isolation, loneliness, anxiety, and the continual sense of failure in navigating the systems. Despite struggling to transition our community and programs online, the peer support team of volunteers delivered 40 peer support groups, offering 103 hours of support delivered online. Once again, Zoom has enabled us to reach people in more remote communities, with 373 families in attendance. The one-to-one peer support for families provides members with information and support regarding mental illness over the telephone and via Zoom and through emails. No one is ever turned away. Many thanks go out to all of our dedicated volunteers, the one-to-one and the group support for families facilitators. These volunteers are a dedicated team with a wealth of experience and supported by our program coordinator, Valeska. We are excited to announce that we will be hosting a peer support team training session on April 1st to recruit new volunteers onto our peer support team. And finally, our third and final pillar is advocacy. Pathways' current advocacy team was formed in 2020, and the team has really hit the ground running, helping families to have a voice in our community. Pathways is on the ground building relationships, providing solutions to complex problems, and partnering wherever possible to provide families with the best possible outcomes. We need everyone at the table. Considering the impact of COVID-19 on all of us, Pathways is proud to say it's had an exceptional year of not only maintaining our program delivery, but we have seen an increase in the demand for our services. This has only been possible because of the vast number of people, many of whom are here tonight, who continue to volunteer to support other families in our community. Pathways is a volunteer-led organisation from our very engaged and working board of directors to our family-to-family teachers and peer support team. All of the work and impact we have on families is only possible because of all of you. On behalf of Pathways, I'd like to thank you all for your continued support and dedication to families who have a loved one living with a serious mental illness. Please stay safe and be healthy. I'll pass it back to Don.
Thank you, Emma. I will now ask our treasurer, Mary Margaret Gay, to present the 2020 audited financial report.
Thank you, Don. Hello, everyone. If you have trouble hearing me, just, I guess, send a chat or something so that I can adjust my speaking. So I'm going to present the audited financial statements, but I'm going to do it with a PowerPoint. And the reason I'm doing it with a PowerPoint presentation is because it's all about numbers. That's what the audited statements are. And this way you can get a better look at what we're doing. I've got a opportunity at the end for questions. So if you do have a question along the way, by all means, either send a chat or at the end, you can put your hands up. Could we move to the slides, please? Could you put it on just the slides without the, yeah, thank you very much. Okay, so these are our audited financial statements. As I said, they're all about numbers, and they tell a good story about Pathways. And if we could have the next slide. Our auditor this year for 2020 was Andrea Agnoni, and he's actually been the auditor for Pathways since the books were first audited, which was probably, I'm not sure, maybe 2 decades ago now. And when he looked at the books, he presented the information, the first draft, to our finance committee, which we got going last year, and it's been functioning very well. And he also presented the financial statements to our board. And he did note that he found the books in good order. So that's good news. And it is a full audit that we're given. So if you could turn to the next slide. So I'm assuming that most of you, if not all of you, have received the financial statements by email, and also the at a glance, which was our 2020 annual report for our activities. These financial statements will tell you how Pathways was able to do the work it did that Emma described, and how it will be doing the work in the future for 2021. So our assets are at the end of the year, this $260,000. And you can see they're 12% higher than they were in 2019. Now that's unusual because most nonprofits had a very tough time this year. And I'll show you shortly how we managed to survive, and not only survive, but come out with a higher net asset. Most of our 76% of our assets are restricted. And for those of you that aren't familiar with that term, these are board restricted funds. We have two areas. We have the Janet Morgan Endowment Fund, which is just over $173,000. And that has been the result of an endowment made many years ago, decades ago. And it was invested and has done very well. And the Family Navigator Fund is a smaller fund. It's $24,000. It too is a board restricted fund. The Janet Morgan Fund has increased slightly over time, but in the last few years, it's remained stable. The next slide, please. Okay, this is a slide that you're never supposed to do what I'm doing and show it to people. I don't know if you can move it over slightly. I see names in front of the figures, but that's okay. This slide has a statement 1 from the financial statements, and that's basically our statement of operations. So what I've looked at, I don't think you can probably see it if you have the side panel with the names on it, but most important here, this tells the story of the financial story for Pathways. Our grants and subsidies this year, and those would be the government subsidies that we got from the Canadian government, are actually almost 70% of our total revenue. And that's a change. In 2019, they were 46%. So our revenues from grants and subsidies have become very important in 2020. And you can see what happened. The donations went down and our fundraising went down. They went down by about 50%. So in 2019, if you can't see it, it were over $100,000 with donations and fundraising. And now it was $53,000 last year, a great decline. And we understand why. We were all facing the pandemic, uncertainty was there. And we didn't do our fundraiser, which Dawn mentioned, the Circle of Strength. That's the only fundraiser that's done, and it wasn't done last year, and it won't be done this year in the same way as it has been in the past. And that's the major source of fundraising. But in spite of that, we had a growth of almost 6.4% from last year. So we actually ended up again with more revenues from last year. In our expense side of the ledger, our program costs dropped significantly. They dropped 68%. The reason for that is what Emma described. We went from putting all our programs in places we'd have to rent to doing it online. So our programming did not decline, it just changed. And that change meant we didn't spend as much on setting up the programs that we had in the past. Our staff increases, costs went up, and they went up not because people were getting, big fancy raises. They went up because we had converted one of our contractors into an employee. So that came with an added cost. We also had an intern, and we had staff turnover, as you know, in 2020. So all that adds up, and that was the difference. But our total expenditures actually declined in 2019 because of that. The net revenues, which you probably cannot see on your screen because I can't see them, we ended up with about $27,000 in net profit. And that's compared with last year when we basically had about 5,500 in as a deficit. And so that relates to what we were talking about in terms of subsidies. So if we could have the next slide, I can show you from from CRA's perspective, and I think this is important as a donator, CRA has online that you can go and look at all the returns from various different charities, nonprofits, and they put together these pie charts. So even though our staff costs look high, you have to think about the staff that is needed to get the work done. So what CRA does is it allocates a certain portion of the expenses in an operation in a nonprofit to programming. And they have certain formulas, and we follow those formulas, and our auditor does it for us. And you can see in 2020, which is on your left-hand side, 93% of our total expenses went into our programming. We had 0% in fundraising. Again, that relates to the circle of strength not being put on, because that's where all our money for fundraising goes. And you can compare that to the pie chart on the right. In 2019, only 6% of our total expenditures went to fundraising. That's putting on the circle of strength. Could we have the next slide, please? So this is what we did. This is how we were able to survive this period of low donations, the pandemic, the uncertainties. The government of Canada was very quick to bring in subsidy programs, and Pathways was able to access those programs. We had subsidies through the wage program, we had rent subsidies, and the Government of Canada put out a loan program, and we accessed that. That loan program for 2020 allowed businesses and nonprofits to borrow $40,000. And of that, if they paid it off by the end of 2022, $10,000 would be a grant. So we access those monies, and we will, as a result of that 40,000, have $10,000 in grant from that, which we can put onto our books at any time. We didn't put it on this year. We also had a number of grants that were specific to COVID, and they came along later. And one was from the New Horizons. The other was a community foundation grant. And so those were unexpected. I mean, we applied for them, but they were unexpected in the sense that New Horizons had already given us a grant. They gave us more money to deal with the COVID situation. In total, all the grants that we got last year were $140,000. And you can see a listing of those in the at a glance that came out with the email. There's quite a few, there's 16, and they're a diversity. I don't think the figures for what we get are listed, but they range from small grants of $1,000 right up to BC Gaming, $44,000. So we have a diversity of grants, and that allows us to build our revenues up. The next slide, please. So what's going to happen this year, 2021? We have still access to the wage subsidy program, but it's probably not going to last the year. It will go down. We're currently looking at the rent subsidy program. It's doubtful that we will be able to access that. The CEBA loan program that I mentioned earlier was actually expanded. So we will be applying for an additional $20,000 loan. So that will increase our loan to $60,000. But then of that, another $10,000 will be given as a grant. So by the end of 2022, when the loan is paid off, that $40,000 is paid off, we get to keep $20,000. So that's a big help. The Family Navigator Fund was to be completed in 2020, and the board decided to extend it, not to spend the money, but to keep it for the future. So the board has extended that program for 3 years. And so that will give us an opportunity to have a bit of a cash pocket, so that if we need some money, it is there. We don't know what the future is going to hold. We did some projections, 2022 projections, and things will be tight without the subsidies. And this will allow us to potentially balance our books. We also established with that $27,000 net income that I mentioned with that very complicated slide, the board established what they called a COVID incentive fund. And this is a non-restricted, but it's a fund to put money aside for operations or for programming as we need it in the years going forward. So we anticipate it'll take some time to build up our revenues again. We don't know that we will be getting all the grants that we did in 2020, but we need to build our donations, and we have to continue to access a diversity of grants, I should say grants and not donations, in order to be able to run pathways to deliver the programs that are being delivered at no cost to the people that are subscribing to them. And so it's going to be some tough work, but we've got a pocket of money that we can use if things are tight. And let's see the next slide. Okay, we had a question that came in before the AGM. And so I'm bringing it to you because some of you may have looked at the financial statements and had the same question. I think it's on, let me just look, it's on page 10 of the financial statements. You'll see that there are 5 term investments that had a very low return. And one would question, I mean, all our returns are low in this day and age. We all know that if we've got money we can save, but these ones were low. And the reason for that, they're 0.6%. So it's even less than, well, it's less than 1, but quite a bit less than 1, is because in about November, we had some money, but we really didn't know what we were facing in 2021. We didn't know if we would get grants. We didn't know if we would get donations. And so we put a number of, some of our money into a number of term deposits that were flex term deposits, which means we could cash them. And we did a number of them, so we didn't have to cash everything all at once. We could cash them as we needed them. Our grants did not come in January. The main grant that comes in, which is from the BC Gaming, but it did not come in February, but it came in March. So in mid-March, just before this AGM, we converted some of those flex terms into longer term deposits at a higher interest rate, because we were then secure knowing that we had the grant that would help us with the cash flow. We kept 2 of them in these low interest deposits, simply so that if we needed them, we had access to them. So I think you could turn the slide off and we could see if anyone has any questions that have arisen as you've gone through the financial statements on your own. If so, you could use the chat line or simply raise your hand. And I think I've got other people watching because I might miss your hands.
Yeah, I can unmute people if they need to ask the question. So just either raise your physical hand or raise a hand through the reactions. Do we have any questions?
Okay, if there's no,
I think we have, I think Pamela is asking. I think I'll ask her to unmute.
Okay.
And then Herschel. Okay, yeah. Pamela, can you, is that you? Okay, I don't think, oh yeah, there we go.
Hi, I'm sorry. I think my hand was raised from a long time ago. I don't have a question. Sorry.
Okay, thanks. No worries. Herschel, I believe you had a question. I'm going to ask you to unmute now. There we go. There we go.
Hi. Okay, thanks for meeting me. I just wanted to thank the treasurer for such a good report. That she took her time actually going through it, which is what a treasurer should do. Well, it was very, very interesting. I sort of do have a question about the cash reserve, which isn't, you know, at the 3-month level. It's only about half that. But you do have 2 other effective cash reserve funds, namely the Family Navigator Fund and the COVID Incentive Fund. And if you total those up, you do have a cash reserve for, for 3 months, for 4 months, which is the standard for nonprofits.
Yeah.
But when those things are drawn down, the two additional reserves are drawn down, you're going to have a need to build up the, technically speaking, cash reserve by itself. And I'm wondering if the treasurer has any comments on that.
Oh, thank you, Herschel. And thank you for your comment about the talk. We spend and you're right, in terms of the amounts that you've done. We spend approximately $20,000 a month. That's our cost. And so roughly 60,000 if one goes for 3 months. I think you're right in how you identified those two funds. And we do have, as you know, we do have the Janet Morgan Fund. I mean, Herschel, for those of you that don't know, he was one of, he and his wife Marguerite were, were you founders, but you certainly kept the association going for many, many years through some very hard times. And it was you that established these two funds, that the Janet Morgan Fund and the Vancouver Foundation. And I must say, looking at what you did, I think you did a very good job. I didn't mention the Vancouver Foundation, but we have a fair amount of money that was put into the Vancouver Foundation, and that is a permanent endowment. What that means is that the money has been given to the Vancouver Foundation, and we receive returns from the investments. And in this last year, which was, we had fairly poor returns for all of us, I'm sure, the Vancouver Foundation paid 3.6%, which was low because typically we get a little bit over 4%. So we get very good returns from that. We also have some returns that have been proven to be very good from preferred shares. Again, this is thanks to you, Herschel. They're doing extremely well right now. In fact, the market value is rising. What are we going to do in the future for the fund that you said, having a little bit of a cash account that we can tap into? We'll see. It's a very difficult year and time to sort of plan that far ahead because of the uncertainty of our revenues, which I described. We're in a very strong position going into 2021, thanks to the government, thanks to the grants that we received. And if we don't need all of that money that we've put aside, I'm sure that it will be held in some kind of account so that it is available to us. The Janet Morgan Fund, to my understanding, is to be kept and the interest used to help run the operation. But in dire situation, in dire circumstance, I remember reading in the minutes from some years ago, many years ago, it could be used in a short-term way to help. We faced dire circumstances in 2020 and we didn't tie into it, which was amazing, but we didn't tie into it because of the largesse of the federal government, which we may all end up having to pay for in the next
Mary Margaret, why do you think I'm asking about the cash reserve? What's behind my asking about the cash reserve?
I think you're asking about the cash reserve because you're worried about the Janet Morgan Fund. Am I right?
Exactly. And the Janet Morgan Fund is an endowment fund, contributions to which were made with the understanding that it was an endowment fund. And what you have to do is not play around with the need for a satisfactory cash reserve. And I suggest that you put the Janet Morgan Fund as, dire expedient out of your mind. And that instead you just concentrate on, let's have a little bit more surplus next year and a little bit more surplus the year following until we get up to that 3 months.
I think, Ursula, I think that's an excellent suggestion. And you know what I'm going to say? I think we need a lot more donations.
I must say,
And then
too,
maybe we can build that. But what I'm hoping for, this is what I'm hoping for. I'm hoping that we won't need those two funds that you've identified, the COVID Incentive Fund and the Family Navigator Fund. And we can use those in some way to start to build what you have wanted for many years, and a lot of nonprofits have. And so I think it's really hard to say in this year and in 2022, because it's going to take us a couple of years as a country to get over the situation that we faced with the pandemic. And so if we can save some of that money and we don't need it, that's what will happen with it, for sure.
it's quite admirable what you've done. But I'm suggesting for the cash reserve itself, as a official cash reserve, that you throw in a few dollars every year until you're up to the right level. You mentioned all this help from government, but what I was thinking of was what a good job you folks have done in actually accessing that money. It's quite impressive.
Yeah. Well, thank you. And it's we have Emma and we have Pune, who's I see in the lower left-hand corner, but Pune is the one that has done our books and figures out if we're eligible. And right now she's trying to figure out if we can access any of the rent subsidies. And it's interesting because those subsidies have been without question helpful. They're a lot of work to get, but we've got them.
And I have to say Nancy Ford has also been testament to the last year and our success.
Oh, that's, yeah, Nancy, of course. Yeah.
The loan, the $40,000 loan, you suggested in the end, $10,000 a year credit to you, you'd only have to return $20,000. Is that correct?
Well, Emma's going to be applying for an additional $20,000 after the AGM. And so that will give us a loan of $60,000. And when we pay it off, we can pay it off anytime up to December 31st, 2022. When we pay it off, we will be granted $20,000. So we take out a loan for 60, we pay it off, and it's a zero interest loan. We pay it off, we get $20,000 as a grant.
But it's not, the loan is not part of your statement of funds.
No, it's on the liability.
Off the books, so to speak.
Well, it's actually identified in the statement, just on another page. And if you go to page,
I see it. It's a note. Yeah.
It's a note, but it also does appear as a liability. It's note 6 on
Right.
page 11.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Emma.
Yes, hello.
I actually had a question about the president's report. Never got a chance to ask it.
Oh yeah, yeah. Go ahead. Of course you can.
I just noticed, Dawn, that in your very good annual report, where you spelled out, as Emma did, the numbers for the support group, family to family, and the school program, and so on, that for one-on-one support there was no stat, and yet it seems to me to be a very useful number for you. And wondered if you noticed there was no statistic for it, and whether you're thinking of tracking that more carefully so that you can cite it, circle of strength, for example.
Yes, we are going to start tracking them. Thanks for bringing that up. Yeah, that's a project in hand.
Oh, good, good. My last question is the Advocacy Committee. Do you have a chair of that committee?
We do. It's Jennifer Bednard. She's on our board, but I don't think she's here this evening.
Oh, can somebody fill us, the membership, in a little bit about who's on the committee, how many people it has, what they feel the biggest challenge is? Just give us a little bit of background, because as members, we're in the dark unless we ask questions like this.
Yeah, of course.
Herschel, I think what we'll do, we'll move that to general discussions on the agenda.
Yeah, okay.
Okay,
Thank you very much.
you're welcome.
Thanks.
Okay,
And, yeah, I'll just finish, but Herschel, just to let you know, thank you for your comments and thank you for your concern. And we have a new treasurer that Dawn will announce, and she's on this meeting tonight. So I'm sure she's also listening to your comments. So if we could have the slide back up and we can move to the motion. This is the motion for our next auditor. Can you take it to just the slideshow? Well, I can just, if you can just move it to the slideshow so we only have the slide and not the sidebar, then maybe we could read it.
I just wanted to point out that Alex has raised her hand. I'm not sure.
Oh, Alex. Oh, you have to unmute.
Hold on, I need to find Alex to unmute her.
Oh, she can't.
Sorry,
Okay.
but it's a small screen now, so I'm scrolling through.
Yeah.
Oh, there she is. There you go, Alex. Alex, you
Sorry,
can
I
talk.
was voting to say yes for this motion.
Oh,
I'm ahead of the
But
game,
Alex,
sorry.
I haven't given the motion yet.
Oh, okay, sorry.
Okay, here's the motion. Here's the
Thumbs up.
motion. To appoint EPR North Vancouver as Pathways, PSMIS's external auditor for the 2021 fiscal year. And I will move that. And Linda McGinn has seconded it. So raise your hands if you're in favor.
and Amy, can you stop sharing so I can count, please? Otherwise, I'm not going to be able to count, if you don't mind. Thank you, everyone. Okay. So we've got 30.
I vote in favor, but I can't seem to raise my blue hand here.
Okay, 31 with Shirley.
Sorry, I've been trying at chat, participants, reactions. None of them work.
Zoom have changed it this week, so that doesn't help.
So are there any
Okay.
opposed? Raise your hands if you're opposed, please.
Can we take the raised hands down first, please?
Yeah, which means you need to lower your raised hands.
Okay.
Any
Okay.
opposed?
Just 2 seconds, Mary Margaret. It just takes a little time to lower everyone's hand. We have to do it. Okay. Who else? Okay, anyone opposed? John, are you opposed? John Gray? I'll ask you to unmute just in case. You're not. No, you're not opposed. Okay. I don't think we have anyone opposed.
So we can call it. So the motion is carried. Thank you very much. And we'll return it to Dawn.
Thank you, Mary Margaret. You always make the financial reports so interesting. And I really appreciate that. Okay, going, let's see, on our next, it's the item 9, acknowledgement of outgoing directors and staff. It is with my deepest appreciation that I would like to acknowledge and thank 2 outstanding long-serving board members who have stepped down, Elena Andrews, our Pathways Fundraising Committee Chair, and Mary Margaret Gay, Pathways Treasurer and Finance Chair. Elena Andrews, you would be hard pressed to find anyone as passionate about pathways as Elena. This passion began when she was helped to navigate the system to get her son into a hospital, diagnosed and treated in 2006. She also benefited from taking the Family to Family course. Since then, Elena can be found securing donations, wrapping gifts, decorating the hall for Christmas dinners, marching in the Canada Day parade to inform the community about Pathways programs and services. This passion also resulted in her securing the sponsors for our annual fundraiser, the Circle of Strength, for 5 years running. Elena was persuaded to join the board of directors in 2019 to serve as the chair of fundraising, since she already chaired the Circle, or she was already the Circle of Strength coordinator. She was also a member of the executive director search committee, which hired Emma Chapman. Elena has decided to step down from the board, but continues to contribute to the roles where she is happiest, such as fundraising and events. Thank you, Elena, for your hard work and love of Pathways. We look forward to many more years of working with you. And Elena, we really, really miss your hugs. Mary Margaret joined the board in 2019, and in just 2 years, she has made a major positive impact on our finances. As an experienced executive director, she stepped directly into the role of treasurer on being elected to the board. She's devoted considerable energy and effort into gathering all the board resolutions and ordering them chronologically and by subject to support decision-making. She also established and chaired a finance committee to provide ongoing oversight of Pathways finances, investments, and budgets. As an officer, Mary Margaret has had signing authority and is a member of the executive committee, which helps steer the society between board meetings. Mary Margaret is stepping down to focus on a major personal project to organize, curate, and publish the hundreds of photos taken of her great-grandfather that captures a significant period of history in Nepal, India, and Burma. We hope she will return to Pathways when she has completed this mammoth project. Pathways is a volunteer-led charity with our peer-to-peer model in which we deliver our programs and support. This would not be possible without the countless volunteers who continually support us and the community we serve. We could not support families without you. And finally, I would like to offer our sincere thanks to our dedicated staff of Pune Julan, Valeska Gautier, Amy Collins, and Emma Chapman for their help in organizing and delivering our free programs. Finally, I would like to acknowledge and give a big thanks to Nancy Ford, Pathways' former executive director, for bridging between executive directors and for transitioning Pathways online delivery services at the start of the pandemic. Now, I'd like to pass the meeting over to Shirley Chan, our Vice President and Chair of the Nominating Committee. Shirley.
Thank you, Mr. President. So I'm pleased to report on behalf of the Nominating Committee that we have 10 board positions. And in 2021, we have 1 board member standing for re-election and 3 standing for the first time. So standing for re-election is Joe Gormley, who's chair of the Policy and Governance Committee and of membership. Joe is also a tech wizard and producer for Family to Family and the AGM. Without Joe's expertise, we would not have had such a well-planned and managed AGM. So thank you, Joe, for all your hard work, and we are grateful that you are standing again for re-election. Now, prior to the AGM, the Nominating Committee identified 3 new board members, outstanding board members with qualifications that we want to recommend to the board, that we did recommend to the board, and who are now being recommended to you, the membership, for election to the board. The 3 are Alex Flynn, Richard Stewart, and Robert Sung. Now, I would like to invite each new candidate to say a few words about themselves and their interest in Pathways. And I'll begin with Alex Flynn. Alex, would you please introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about why you'd like to work with us? I know you've already been working with us, but anyway.
Thank you, Shirley. My journey started 4 years ago when my son was hospitalized for over a month with psychosis at the Hope Center. And that shattered our normal worlds. And it is only with support from many organizations, including the Hope Center, but particularly Pathways, that really gave us a grounding, understanding, counseling, and all the elements we needed to support our son on his path and our family forward in all of our best health and well-being. And as that journey progressed, I was able to continue in my professional career as a public practice accountant. I've been a CPA, CGA for the last, we'll just round it off at 30 years, and have enjoyed public practice, serving a wide range of businesses, and during personal tax season, filing personal returns. I had been a consultant to one smaller downtown CPA firm, and in the last 2 months have joined Manning Elliott, a mid-sized CPA firm. I was on Mary Margaret's finance committee for Pathways, so already feel I have some intimate knowledge of Pathways finances and operations, and am looking forward to joining the board and filling the role as treasurer. Although I know Mary Margaret's work has been tremendous, and I know I won't probably move ahead of the way that she has, but I am very grateful for her foundation work and organization that has set up the committee and organized Pathways so well for me to join. Thank you.
Thank you, Alex. I just want to add that Alex was also, I got to know her a bit when she served on the Housing Ad Hoc Committee, which when we were trying to look at what was appropriate housing for our different families and our different loved ones' needs. So it was a pleasure to work with her, and I'm just so grateful to have her stand tonight. So now I would also like to invite Richard Stewart to say a few words, and some of you may know his name already, but I'll pass it to you, Richard. Thank you again, Alex. Richard, are you there?
I am indeed. Thank you very much. It's a pleasure to be here tonight. Thank you all. My name is Richard. I work in the mayor's office in Coquitlam, and but our journey as a family started about 8 years ago with the diagnosis of our daughter with some significant mental health issues, and ultimately became bipolar 2. She was hospitalized repeatedly. We got to see firsthand the gaps, the enormous challenges, the realities of calling 911 and for an ambulance and getting guns at the door to manage your daughter. We got to see all of that, and we came to understand, partly through family to family. My wife and I took the course and really enjoyed it, and came to know this society, but came to know a lot of other families who have faced similar realities with their loved ones. So I'm pretty passionate about this. I have worked with various levels of government trying to advance the cause. My daughter has been to the legislature with me, and we've spoken, and I've beat the drum at the various mayors' forums and local government forums, as well as provincial and federal government, primarily provincial, to try to see a better way to move forward for families and for persons with mental illness. I have hosted Herschel in my office because he has lots of ideas and is always willing to share them, and I thank Herschel for that. The role of mayor doesn't have a lot to do with mental health, other than the fact that our police department is the first responder for a type of medical call, which is absolutely bizarre. And it surprises me every single time when I hear those words from a cop who doesn't want to go to the call. That's not, he didn't become an ambulance driver. That's not why he went into the profession, or she. And we want to find some better solutions that include a more regional or provincial version of first response for mental health crisis. So I'm most pleased I've always been pleased to work with Pathways and its predecessor name. Incidentally, our daughter Vanessa, who has always been very public with her mental illness, succeeded in graduating from Douglas College with a psych nursing degree and is now working as a psychiatric nurse at Riverview in Coast Mental Health's rehab and rehabilitation program for persons with dual diagnosis. And so life is good.
Well, thank you, Richard. You're very modest to say you work in the mayor's office. I worked in the mayor's office too, but I was just as chief of staff. So you get to wear the robes and the chain of office, I guess, if you do.
As seldom as possible.
But I just want to say that your advocacy is something that we really appreciate and we look forward to, and being able to share ideas and learn more about what we can do across the region certainly is important. Now I'd like to invite Robert Sung to say a few words. Robert is our third candidate tonight, a new member for the board.
Thank you very much, Shirley. Good evening, everybody. Thank you for having me and having to be considered. I'm a person with lived experience. 2014, I was diagnosed as bipolar 2. And since then, it's been a journey tapping into resources like Safer Counseling, VGH Psychiatric for Cognitive Behavior Therapy and Dialectic Behavior Therapy. Also participated in the Pacific Bipolar Foundation and having focus groups or just support meetings. And from the Pacific Bipolar Foundation, they started a peer support training to which I trained, and then I became a peer support worker for about 6 months. That ended, and since then, I've been involved in the Vancouver Coastal Health Family Advisory Council for 2 years. And my purpose was to help others, to help myself. So I also signed up as a speaker for the BC Schizophrenic Society, but because of pandemic, that did not occur. Boards and committees that I've done in the past, for a number of years, I was the Vancouver Friends for Life Society and was on the Chinese Canadian Historical Society of British Columbia, and also the Vancouver Chinatown Revitalization Committee. My background, 30 years in the culinary industry, food for about 30 years, from a business administration background and a culinary background, went from business operations to chefing to teaching. So that is my background. Currently right now, I have a business that conducts walking tours of Chinatown. Being third generation Chinese Canadian, my purpose is to showcase Chinese heritage, my Chinese heritage, from a culinary and cultural perspective. So that is me.
Thank you, Bob. I think that I have to say that Bob makes a mean soy chicken, and I would.
Well, you make good ribs.
Yeah, coming to your home to help cook for you if you like, to serve a meal. That's an amazing experience to have Bob do that for you. He certainly did that for my family a few times. So thank you. And he has good board experience and was on the Family Advisory Committee for Vancouver Coastal Health. So he's got some great networks. Anyway, so now I'd like to open the meeting to nominations from the floor. So this is one of the things that we provide in our bylaws. May I remind you that both the nominator and the nominee must be members in good standing. Also, board members are expected to fulfill their responsibilities to the society in furthering its mission, programs, priorities, and fiduciary responsibilities. A nomination will require that members actually conduct a vote tonight for up to 4 candidates. So now I ask you as members, are there any other nominations? are there any other nominations? And for the third time, are there any other nominations? You can put your hand up if you have, or so that you can be unmuted. So do you see any other nominations, Emma?
No, I do not. No.
Okay. All right. So if there are no further nominations, I declare the returning board member, Joe Gormley, and the 3 new board members, that is Alex Flynn, Richard Stewart, and Bob Sung, elected. Thank you, everyone. And now I pass the meeting back to Dawn. You guys have made a good decision.
Thank you, Shirley. Yeah, I'm starting to get hungry with the menus that you guys proposed. I noticed that cabbage rolls wasn't on the list, so I'm kind of
Chinese
sad.
cabbage roll?
Yeah.
More like spring roll?
Anyway, okay. Next, general discussion. The meeting now is open for general discussion. Is there anyone who would like to ask questions or make any remarks? If so, please raise their hand.
Patricia, I think, would like to ask a question.
Sure.
I'm just going to ask you to unmute, Patricia. So if you can you click unmute? There we go.
I just want to say hi to Bob because my mom and her mom are very good friends. Your mom was Vera. I'm one of the Murray girls. Yeah, Patty. So welcome. Yes. And hello to everyone. And I don't know if you know, Bob, I lost my son to suicide. It'll be 4 years on Tuesday. So I have some experience and yeah, hopefully you'll find lots of support. And I'm very happy that you're a board member.
Thank you, Patty.
That's it.
We'll connect.
Great. Any other questions? Oh, Herschel, I'll just ask you to unmute. There we go.
Yeah, no, I just re-asking my question. Just wanted a bit more background on the Advocacy Committee.
Of course. So on the Advocacy Committee.
Yeah, and what you've been doing and what you feel your biggest challenges are.
Yeah, I'm going to ask Nancy to actually unmute, but I can tell you who's on the committee. So we have Jennifer Bednard, who unfortunately couldn't be here this evening, is our chair and is on our board of directors. We have Nancy Ford, Wendy, I've forgotten Wendy's surname. Maynard. Wendy, who's recently joined. We have Bonnie Sauder. Should be here this evening. And Janice Lilly, who's also here, I believe, with Joe. So yeah, it was pretty much formed, I think, in and around the time that I joined, and has been a very active committee. Nancy, did you want to speak a bit to the discussions that we've had? And
Sure. Thank you. Thank you, Emma. I think probably what we're most delighted about was writing a letter to Sheila Malcolmson on behalf of the board and inviting Sheila to come and spend time with us tonight. So that was just, I think that was where we launched. There really hadn't been much advocacy over the past few years. There just really wasn't anyone who was able to take on that role. And in my retirement, I saw an opportunity to convene. I don't see myself as an expert in any way. And I looked to Janice Lilly, who brings lots to the board, Jennifer Bernard, who is a lawyer by trade. And so my role I see is as a convener, bringing people to come together. And Pat Murray, I've been meaning to give you a call, so you're going to hear from me. I've been in touch with Jane Thornthwaite. She has recently retired, and she's an MLA. She was an MLA for North Vancouver riding, and invited her to be part of our committee as a consultant in terms of navigating ministries. We've written letters to regarding Bill C7. We've had quite a concern around the amendment regarding people with mental illness having access to Bill C7. And I guess the other one would be, we've written a letter to, in response to, there's been a couple of articles in the papers, in the various papers, regarding patients' experiences on the ward, and over and over again, they point to the Mental Health Act. And what we're trying, I think, as a team is to ensure that it's not the Mental Health Act, to bring awareness that it's not the Mental Health Act that is the issue. It's the treatment of patients on the ward once they're there. And as a family member, having gone through that experience, and Richard, I really appreciate guns at the door. That's a good way of putting it. My son's first experience in the hospital, while I'm really glad he got in and he got the medication he needed, a lot of the behavior and a lot of the acts while on the ward are in question in certainly our mind. And I can't think of anything else at the moment.
I can.
Yeah, I
Want me
wanted
to
to hand
speak?
it over. Yeah.
Okay. Well, you wrote to John Horgan about the BC Mental Health Act, and
right.
as well as, we wrote to Senate and MPs about C7, which is the medically assisted assistance in dying, and concern around that, of course, which you mentioned. We talked about the treatment of patients, but also the CAR 87 was an issue that we addressed as well as a group, and the Police Act review. So those are all issues that you're working on, and when we see an issue that comes up, that's what we're trying to do, make some better positive changes.
And I don't know if Herschel, if you've had a chance, but Shirley was interviewed by CBC regarding CAR 87, and it's brilliant. It's absolutely marvelous. And we don't allow Shirley to be on the committee because she's too busy. We keep her apprised of everything that goes on.
She's a regular person that attends, though, aren't you, Shirley? You do
Yes.
attend quite a few of the meetings anyway. Patricia.
Just one other advocacy issue. It is around the BC, it's a provincial issue around the Wrongful Death Act, which is apparently goes back to 1860s or some 70s or somewhere. It's very old. It has to do with, there's a lot of work being done around it right now. The Vancouver City Council is on board to change this act, which is very archaic and doesn't allow any recourse if you lose a loved one, whether it's in the hospital or in a car accident, unless that person, it was a breadwinner in the family, you have no recourse. So and there's a sort of new, it's been around for 10 or 20 years. I think it's called the BC Wrongful Death Care Law. I learned a little bit about it after Rowan died, because I tried to have some recourse against a doctor who prematurely discharged him. And Herschel would know about this. Have you heard of this organization, Herschel? Be interested. Anyway, they're having a new campaign. It's called In Their Name. And I forwarded it to Dawn, but I can forward it to you guys in the office, and just something to follow up that Pathways might want to get on board in joining this movement to advocate to change this really old archaic law, which only exists in British Columbia, does not exist in, I believe, any other province in the country, and it needs to be changed. So I think it ties into holding the medical community responsible for the care of our loved ones, and when they do foolish things and our loved ones die, that there is recourse, because ultimately the way it's set up now, they're better off as a medical professional if your loved one dies versus if they're permanently debilitated, because then there is some responsibility. If they die, it's like, unless you are the parent and are the breadwinner in the family, there is no recourse. That's it.
Thanks, Pat.
I was going to say sarcastically, good luck.
Well, no, it's an interesting thing that's happening, Herschel, that they're making some progress. They have
Okay.
all of the counselors in the city of Vancouver on board. I recall discussing this with you 2 or 3 years ago after Rowan died, and you said, well, maybe that's an approach to take. There are other people separate from, in a way what we do, but I think it has an impact on what we do, that, if we do lose our loved ones and it's a malpractice or a wrongful death is the technical term, that, we should have some recourse.
Good.
Yeah.
Anybody else would like to have a say? Well, okay, then if not, I would like to make some closing remarks. It will be short. But before I bring this meeting to a close, I would like to-
Don,
yeah.
sorry, Richard has his hand up. He wanted to
Oh.
speak.
Okay.
Thank you. I was going to let him go, but there was a comment made about Vancouver Council. One of their councillors, Councillor Lisa Dominato, I've known her from 20 years ago in Victoria. She worked closely with one of our nonprofits in mental health and has a real passion for mental health as well. And so there's Lisa Dominato is a good contact at Vancouver City Council on issues specific to mental health. Not, everyone's passionate about all kinds of the very public realities, but the issues that parents and families face, Lisa knows them well. So just wanted to pass that on.
Well, thank you. I knew I was going to get cut off by the mayor. Anyway, I would like to thank the current board members, committee chairs, committees, volunteers, and you, the membership, for making this AGM and Pathways possible. Your dedication in helping Pathways provide free services of our programs is priceless, and it will never be taken for granted. I would like to close this meeting with a quote from Paul Scheer. As one person, I cannot change the world, but I can change the world of one person. This brings our meeting to a close. Thank you very much. Thank you for all the participants, and stay safe, be healthy. Take care.
Thank you, everyone.
Could we ask for the board members to remain behind, please? All the new board members to remain behind to elect some officers. Thank you.
Lydia, I don't know if you had a question. Sorry, you've just raised it. I can unmute you if you had a question, or we could speak after. I can't hear you. You have to unmute yourself.
Okay, so I don't know if that's the question or that's the sort of self-impression. My son has been hospitalized twice. They released him after a couple of days. And they said, because he's very intelligent, he was doing his PhD in philosophy and math. And they said they cannot keep him there. And obviously he wasn't taking his medication because he thought all these pharmaceutical companies, they're trying to mess with his brain. So we had to, this is a flaw in our mental health system because my son was sick.
Can we provide you with help with your son privately?
This is what I'm doing now.
Well, this is you're a part of a big meeting right now. This is not a support group. This is the annual general meeting.
No, it's just, no, I just wanted to mention we have a flaw in our system.
Oh, okay.
And we have to get to the overseas to be able to put our loved one in voluntary to get medical help.
Yes.
Lydia,
absolutely.
I'm going to send you, I'll ask Valeska to send you her details, and you can reach out to Valeska.
Okay.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay, so is that it? Is the meeting drawn to a conclusion with the officers, with the board members remaining?
Yes, I believe. Oh.
No, there's still non-board members in the room. I'm just going to put
ask
them
the
into
board
the
members to
waiting
remain
room.
behind, or are they all gone?
We still have.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good night.
Nice to see you, Susie.
Bye.
Good night.
Bye. Oh, Emma, you stay behind too, right?
Yeah, I'm just trying to.
Good night, Pune.
And can I stop recording now for the AGM?
Yes, please. Yeah.
Okay.
Do we have any board members left?